The Broken Promise. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the massive circular chamber aboard Nexus Prime, the gleaming space station that served as the headquarters for the Galactic Trade Consortium. The air tasted metallic and sterile, processed through alien filtration systems that never quite felt right to human lungs. Around her, representatives from 47 different species sat in tiered seating that spiraled upward into the shadows above. Some breathed methane, others required temperature suits, and a few existed as pure energy contained within crystalline matrices. For 3 long years, Elena had walked these halls. 3 years of careful diplomacy, patient negotiation, and endless compromise. She had learned their languages, studied their cultures, and bent over backward to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. Today was supposed to be the culmination of all that work. Today, humanity was finally going to be accepted into the Galactic Trade Consortium. The speaker of the assembly, a towering crystalline being called Zethera, pulsed with soft blue light as it addressed the chamber. Its voice resonated through translation devices, creating an eerie harmony of sounds that somehow formed words Elena could understand. Esteemed representatives, Zethera began, we gather today to discuss the final terms of humanity's integration into our consortium. The evaluation period has been illuminating. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Something in the speaker's tone was wrong. This wasn't the ceremonial language of acceptance she had been expecting. The other human delegates shifted nervously behind her. Ambassador Chen, her second in command, leaned forward with concern written across his weathered face. The humans have proven remarkably adaptable, continued Zethera. Their biological resilience has exceeded our most optimistic projections. The various trials we have conducted have yielded data beyond our wildest expectations. Trials. The word hit Elena like a physical blow. She had heard whispers, rumors of missing colony ships, unexplained disappearances, strange illnesses that swept through outer settlements. But the alien authorities had always provided explanations. Navigational errors, equipment failures, new pathogens from unexplored worlds. Speaker Zethera, Elena interrupted, her voice cutting through the chamber's ambient hum. What trials are you referring to? The crystalline being pulsed brighter, and Elena caught what might have been amusement in its energy patterns. Around the chamber, she noticed alien representatives exchanging glances. Some seemed uncomfortable, others appeared pleased. Captain Vasquez, Zethera replied, surely you understood that membership in the consortium requires thorough evaluation. We needed to understand human capabilities, limitations, and potential applications within our greater society. Applications. Elena's blood ran cold. Behind her, she heard Ambassador Chen's sharp intake of breath. The other human delegates were whispering urgently among themselves, but Elena's focus was entirely on the speaker. Explain, she demanded, abandoning all diplomatic protocol. A new figure rose from the assembly. This was Korthak, a reptilian being from the Srathi hegemony. His scales gleamed under the chamber's artificial lighting, and his serpentine neck swayed as he spoke. The missing colony ship Endeavor, Korthak hissed, was redirected to our research facility on Kepler 442 bits. The humans aboard proved exceptionally useful in testing our new atmospheric processors. Their adaptability allowed us to gather crucial data on toxic gas exposure limits. Elena's vision blurred with rage. The Endeavor had carried 12,000 colonists, including 3,000 children. They had vanished 18 months ago while en route to establish humanity's first deep space colony. The settlement on Proxima Centauri added another voice, this one belonging to a floating jellyfish-like creature, provided excellent subjects for our psychological conditioning experiments. Humans under extreme stress exhibit fascinating neural plasticity. More voices joined in, each revelation more horrifying than the last. Missing ships, vanished colonies, entire human populations used as lab rats for alien experiments. Elena realized with growing horror that everything she had believed about humanity's place in the galaxy was a lie. "You've been experimenting on us," she whispered. Then louder, "You've been experimenting on us this entire time." "Of course," Zethara replied with what Elena now recognized as condescension. "How else were we to determine humanity's proper role within the consortium? Your species shows remarkable promise as a labor force. Your emotional volatility makes you excellent subjects for behavioral studies, and your breeding rate suggests you could be a sustainable resource for various applications." Resource, labor force, applications. Elena understood now. Humanity had never been considered for membership as equals. They had been evaluated as livestock. Ambassador Chen stepped forward, his face pale with shock and fury. "The children," he said, his voice barely controlled. "What happened to the children?" A new alien spoke up, a being that looked like an enormous insect with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles. "Young humans proved exceptionally useful in our cognitive development studies. Their neuroplasticity allowed us to test various enhancement procedures. Most subjects survived the initial trials." Most subjects. Elena's hands clenched into fists. Behind her, she could hear her fellow delegates struggling to maintain composure. Some were weeping. Others were muttering prayers or curses in their native languages. "This ends now," Elena said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. The alien representatives fell silent. Zethara's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been surprise. "Captain Vasquez," the speaker said carefully, "I believe you misunderstand the situation. Humanity's evaluation period is complete. We are prepared to offer your species associate membership status, with appropriate restrictions and oversight, of course." "No," Elena replied, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You misunderstand the situation. We reject your offer. We reject your consortium. We reject everything you represent." A wave of shocked sounds rippled through the chamber. Clicks, hisses, electronic whines, and harmonic tones created a cacophony of alien distress. Elena had never heard anything so beautiful. "Captain," Zethara's voice carried a note of warning, "you should consider your words carefully. Humanity is not in a position to make demands." Elena laughed, a harsh sound that seemed to startle many of the alien representatives. "You're right. We're not making demands. We're making a statement. From this moment forward, humanity withdraws from all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Trade Consortium and its member species." She turned to address the entire assembly, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "You have 72 hours to remove all alien presence from human space. That includes your research stations, your observation posts, and your so-called diplomatic missions." The chamber erupted in chaos. Alien delegates were shouting, their translation devices creating an incomprehensible babble of angry voices. Some were already transmitting urgent messages to their homeworlds. Others were demanding security intervene. Korthek rose to his full height, his reptilian form imposing in the artificial lighting. "You forget yourself, human. Your species lacks the capability to enforce such demands. You have no fleet worthy of the name, no advanced weapons, no allies among the civilized worlds." Elena smiled, and this time there was no humor in it whatsoever. "You're about to learn something about humans that your experiments missed. We don't need advanced weapons or alien allies. We just need to be angry enough." She gestured to her delegation. "We're leaving, and when we get back to Earth, we're going to tell everyone exactly what you've been doing to us. Every missing colony, every vanished ship, every child you've tortured in the name of science. The consortium will not allow such defiance," Zethara declared, its crystalline form flaring with bright energy. "Your species will be contained. Your expansion will be limited. Your defiance will be corrected through appropriate measures." Elena paused at the chamber's exit, turning back one final time. "You've spent 3 years studying us, and you still don't understand the first thing about humanity. We're not a resource to be managed or a problem to be solved. We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We're the species that went from horse-drawn carriages to space travel in less than a century. She let her words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. But most importantly, we're the species that has never, ever backed down from a fight when our children are threatened. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed to our limits. Congratulations, you're about to find out. With that, she turned and walked out of the chamber, her delegation following in grim silence. Behind them, the alien representatives continued their panicked discussions, but Elena was no longer listening. Her mind was already racing ahead, calculating travel times, communication delays, and mobilization schedules. The journey back to Earth would take 6 days. By the time they arrived, every human colony, every orbital station, every deep space mining operation would know the truth. And then the real test would begin. Humanity had spent 3 years trying to join the galactic community. Now they would have to survive being expelled from it. As their ship pulled away from Nexus Prime, Elena stood at the observation deck watching the alien space station shrink into the distance. Ambassador Chen joined her, his expression grim but determined. "They'll come for us," he said quietly. 47 species against 1. We're outnumbered by odds that would make mathematicians weep. Elena nodded, still watching the stars. Probably. But they've made one crucial mistake. What's that? She turned to face him, and Chen was struck by the steel in her eyes. They think this is about numbers. It's not. It's about what we're fighting for. They're fighting to maintain their status quo. We're fighting for our children. The ship's engines hummed as they accelerated toward the hyperspace jump point. In 6 days, they would reach Earth. In 7, the entire human species would know the truth. And then, Elena thought with grim satisfaction, the aliens would learn what humanity was really capable of when they stopped trying to play by someone else's rules. The first rule of human warfare, she reflected, was that there were no rules when survival was at stake. The Galactic Trade Consortium was about to get a very expensive education in that principle. The human solution. The emergency session of the Galactic Trade Consortium convened barely 12 hours after the human delegation's departure from Nexus Prime. Representatives who had been smugly confident just days before now filled the chamber with an atmosphere of barely controlled panic. The crystalline speaker, Zethera, pulsed with agitated energy patterns as reports flooded in from across consortium space. "The situation has escalated beyond our projections," Zethera announced, its harmonic voice carrying undertones of distress. "Human colonies throughout their territory have begun mobilizing. Their primitive communication networks are broadcasting what they call the truth about our research programs." Korthak, the Srathi representative, slithered forward, his scales rippling with anger. "Their response is irrational. They lack the technological capability to pose any meaningful threat to consortium interests. We should simply impose a containment blockade around their system." A new voice interrupted the reptilian delegate. This belonged to Admiral Thys, a 4-armed cephalopod whose species, the Kethani, controlled the consortium's largest military fleet. Her translator device rendered her bioluminescent communication patterns into words that carried cold calculation. "Intelligence reports suggest the humans are more capable than our initial assessments indicated," Admiral Thys said, her tentacles writhing with what might have been concern. "Their fleet composition includes vessels we had not previously catalogued. More concerning, they appear to be rapidly retrofitting civilian ships for military purposes." "Retrofitting," scoffed another delegate, a gaseous being contained within an environmental suit. "Their technology is centuries behind our own. What threat could their makeshift vessels possibly pose?" The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every human vessel within 50 light years. The facility hummed with activity as analysts, strategists, and communication specialists worked around the clock to coordinate humanity's response. "Status report," Elena commanded, her eyes scanning the tactical displays. General Marcus Thompson, head of Earth's Combined Defense Forces, stepped forward. His graying hair and weathered face spoke of decades spent preparing for a war he had hoped would never come. All civilian populations have been evacuated from border systems. The merchant fleet has been successfully converted to support roles. Our primary battle groups are taking positions along the perimeter. Numbers? Elena asked. Approximately 800 vessels of various classes, Thompson replied. Not all of them were designed for combat, but every ship we've got is armed and ready to fight. Elena nodded grimly. 800 ships sounded impressive until you considered that the Galactic Trade Consortium could field over 10,000 vessels from their member species' combined fleets. But Elena had learned something during her years of diplomatic service. Sometimes the side with the most ships wasn't the side that won. What about the Kobayashi Protocol? She asked. Thompson's expression grew even more serious. Ready for implementation on your command. Every colony world, every space station, every asteroid mining facility has been equipped with the necessary components. If we can't hold a position, we'll make sure they can't use it either. The Kobayashi Protocol was humanity's answer to superior numbers. Named after a legendary no-win scenario, it embodied a simple principle. If you couldn't win, you changed the rules of the game. Every human installation was now equipped with explosives capable of rendering it completely unusable. The aliens might overrun human positions, but they would inherit nothing but debris. Captain, called out Dr. Sarah Chen, Elena's chief scientific advisor and the ambassador's daughter. We're receiving reports from our deep space observation posts. Multiple alien fleets are converging on our border systems. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. Elena studied the incoming data, noting the fleet compositions and approach vectors. The aliens were doing exactly what she had expected, bringing overwhelming force to bear in a conventional assault. It was a logical strategy, based on sound military principles and backed by superior technology. It was also exactly the wrong way to fight humans. General Thompson, Elena said, turning to the military commander, implement Operation Hornet's Nest. All battle groups are to avoid direct confrontation until further notice. Thompson nodded, understanding immediately. The Hornet's Nest doctrine was based on a simple observation. When facing a superior enemy, don't fight them where they're strong. Instead, hit them where they're weak, when they're weak, and in ways they don't expect. The first alien fleet to reach human space was a consortium task force led by Admiral Thiss herself. 300 vessels of various configurations, equipped with advanced energy weapons, quantum shielding, and sensory arrays that could detect a single human heartbeat from a light year away. It was a force capable of reducing entire worlds to molten slag. Admiral Thiss established her command aboard the dreadnought Inexorable Truth, a vessel 2 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that could crack planets. As her fleet moved into human territory, she expected immediate resistance. Instead, she found nothing. Sensor report, she commanded, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with confusion. No immediate contacts. Admiral, replied her tactical officer, a insectoid being with multiple compound eyes. Long-range scans indicate human vessels in the system, but they're maintaining distance and not responding to our hails. Cowardice, clicked Admiral Thiss with satisfaction. They recognize their inferiority and flee before our advance. Begin bombardment of the outer system defensive installations. What followed was a perfect example of why the consortium had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Their weapons were precise, devastating, and utterly overwhelming. Human orbital platforms vanished in brilliant flashes of energy. Asteroid mining stations were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Within 6 hours, every fixed human installation in the system had been obliterated. Resistance eliminated, reported the tactical officer. The system is ours. Admiral Thiss allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Perhaps the humans would prove more reasonable once they realized the futility of resistance. But her satisfaction was short-lived. Admiral, called out the communications officer, we're receiving reports from the Proxima and Wolf 359 systems. Our occupation forces are encountering difficulties. The difficulties, as it turned out, were becoming a pattern throughout consortium space. The humans weren't fighting conventional battles. Instead, they were doing something far more dangerous. They were thinking like humans. In the Proxima system, a consortium mining operation had been attacked not by human warships, but by an asteroid. The rock had been hollowed out, packed with explosives, and accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed before being aimed at the alien facility. By the time the consortium's sensors detected the threat, it was already too late. The mining station and its 3,000 workers had been vaporized in an instant. In Wolf 359, human forces had lured a consortium patrol into an apparent trap, then used the patrol's own weapons against them. The humans had somehow hacked the alien ship's targeting systems, causing them to fire on each other in a cascade of friendly fire incidents that left the entire squadron disabled. But the most disturbing report came from the Kepler system, where consortium forces had discovered that every human civilian had vanished. The colonies were intact, the infrastructure was functional, but 10 million humans had simply disappeared. When consortium investigators arrived, they found a single message broadcast on all frequencies: "Come and find us." They're not fighting a war, Admiral Thiss realized as she studied the reports. They're fighting a campaign of terror. Her assessment was both accurate and completely wrong. The humans weren't trying to terrorize the consortium forces. They were trying to survive. And survival, Alina had learned, required different tactics than victory. Back in the Sol system, Alina reviewed the latest intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. The alien forces were responding exactly as she had predicted, with increasing frustration and decreasing effectiveness. "The Cathani Admiral is requesting reinforcements," reported General Thompson. "She's also demanding civilian hostages to force our compliance." "Let her demand," Alina replied. "By the time she realizes that threats don't work on us, it will be too late." "For them or for us?" asked Dr. Chen. Alina smiled, and for the first time in weeks, there was genuine warmth in the expression. "That depends on whether they're smart enough to recognize a losing proposition when they see one." The truth was becoming clear to both sides. This wasn't a war that could be won through conventional means. The consortium had the superior technology, the larger fleets, and the overwhelming numerical advantage. But the humans had something the aliens couldn't understand or counter. They were fighting for their survival, their children, and their future. More importantly, they were fighting like humans. They'd broke rules, ignored conventions, and used tactics that no civilized species would consider. They turned civilian vessels into weapons, transformed asteroids into missiles, and treated every engagement as a puzzle to be solved rather than a battle to be won. 3 weeks into the conflict, Admiral Thiss found herself facing a situation that her military training had never prepared her for. She was winning every battle and losing the war. Every human position she captured was worthless. Every human force she defeated was replaced by 2 more. Every victory cost her more resources than she could afford to lose. The final straw came when her own flagship, the Inexorable Truth, was crippled not by enemy fire, but by a computer virus that the humans had somehow introduced into the ship's systems. The virus didn't destroy the ship or harm the crew. Instead, it played a simple message on every screen throughout the vessel. Humanity remembers. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not surrender. As Admiral Thiss watched her technical crews struggle to purge the virus from their systems, she realized that the consortium had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that the humans would fight like civilized beings, following established rules of warfare and diplomacy. Instead, the humans were fighting like humans, creative, adaptive, and absolutely ruthless when their survival was at stake. It was Admiral Thiss who finally requested a ceasefire, not because she couldn't continue the war, but because she had finally understood what Alina Vasquez had tried to tell the consortium months ago. This wasn't a conflict between civilized species. This was a fight between predators and prey, and the humans had just reminded the galaxy which role they preferred to play. The ceasefire negotiations took place in neutral space, aboard a station controlled by a species that had remained independent of the consortium. Alina arrived with a small delegation, facing a room full of alien representatives who looked far less confident than they had during their last meeting. Captain Vasquez, speaker's ethera began, its crystalline form flickering with uncertain energy patterns. The consortium is prepared to discuss terms for ending this unfortunate conflict. Alina studied the assembled aliens for a long moment before responding. I'm not here to discuss terms for ending the conflict. I'm here to discuss terms for the future relationship between humanity and the galactic community. The aliens exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a subtle background of anxiety throughout the chamber. What are your demands? Asked Admiral Thiss, her tentacles coiled with barely controlled tension. Alina smiled, and this time the expression held no warmth whatsoever. Complete reparations for every human life lost to your experiments. Formal recognition of human sovereignty over all territories we currently occupy. And most importantly, the establishment of a new galactic charter based on the principle that no species may conduct research on another without explicit consent. Impossible, Korthak hissed. The consortium has existed for millennia. We cannot restructure galactic civilization because one species refuses to accept its place in the natural order. Alina's smile didn't waver. Then you can explain to your constituents why their fleets are being systematically dismantled by the species they considered primitive. Because make no mistake, this war continues until our terms are met, and we've demonstrated that we're very good at making wars expensive for our enemies. The negotiations took 3 days. In the end, the consortium agreed to Alina's terms, not because they were generous, but because the alternative was unthinkable. The humans had proven that they could make any military victory Pyrrhic, any occupation impossible, and any conventional strategy useless. The new galactic charter was signed aboard the same station where humanity had first been rejected from the consortium. But this time, Alina wasn't asking for membership in someone else's organization. She was establishing a new framework for interstellar relations, one based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. As she watched the alien representatives sign the document that would become known as the Terra Accords, Alina reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Humanity had been tested, betrayed, and pushed to the brink of extinction. In response, they had done what humans always did when faced with extinction. They had evolved. The galaxy would never again underestimate the species from Sol. More importantly, no species would ever again have to endure what humanity had suffered. The Terra Accords established rights and protections for all sentient beings, enforced not by the threat of superior technology, but by the promise that humanity would respond to any violation with the same creativity and determination they had shown in their war against the consortium. Years later, when interstellar historians wrote about the conflict, they would struggle to classify it. It wasn't quite a war, since most of the fighting had been asymmetrical. It wasn't quite a revolution, since the humans had never sought to overthrow the existing order. In the end, they settled on calling it the Great Awakening, the moment when the galaxy realized that intelligence came in many forms, and that the most dangerous form was the one that refused to accept defeat. Alina Vasquez retired from active service shortly after the signing of the Terra Accords, but her legacy lived on in the new institutions she had helped create. The galaxy had learned to fear human anger, but more importantly, it had learned to respect human determination. And in the end, that respect had proven far more valuable than the membership in the Galactic Trade Consortium that humanity had originally sought. They had been rejected as subjects and had become leaders instead. The universe, as it turned out, was big enough for everyone. It just needed humans to remind it of that fact.